A black screen. Silence. Then, slowly, a single punch card appears. One card, one fragment of code, the language of a new world being born. The year is the 1950s. America is booming. IBM is building machines that can think, colossal humming giants that fill entire rooms. But here's the twist. Inside that revolution was someone almost completely erased from memory. A black engineer, a man whose invention made the impossible possible. He didn't create a flashy gadget. He didn't design something you could hold in your hand. He created something invisible, something essential, the very thing that allows computers to remember. Stop and imagine it. Every phone call you've ever made, every photo on your smartphone, every email, every app, every memory stored in silicon traces back to his discovery. And yet, you've probably never heard his name. Not in classrooms, not in textbooks, not even in the very halls of tech companies that owe him everything. Why? Why would history bury a man who helped ignite the digital age? Why does the story of the memory inside your computer have no memory of him? Tonight, we dig deep into the forgotten genius, into the invention that changed the world, and into the uncomfortable truth of why his legacy was almost erased. Because this is not just a story of science, it's a story of silence. So, the question is, who was this man? And what else have we been taught to forget? Imagine stepping off a train in America, late 1940s. The war has ended. Soldiers are coming home. Skyscrapers rise. Factories roar. The country feels unstoppable. But underneath the glow of victory lies division. Segregation in schools. Jim Crow laws in the South. Signs that read whites only, plastered across restaurants, buses, even water fountains. For a black child with dreams of science, the path ahead was not just steep, it was nearly impossible. Now picture the other side of this same America. Technology, exploding. Radar, jet engines, atomic energy, innovations born in war, now fueling peace. And at the center of this technological race stood IBM. IBM wasn't just another company. It was the company, the titan of data, the empire of machines. Their slogan, think, and they meant it. Inside IBM's laboratories, engineers in crisp white shirts leaned over hulking computers, machines the size of closets humming with tubes, wires, and blinking lights. These giants could calculate faster than any human, but they had a fatal flaw. They couldn't remember. Every time a switch flipped, every time the power cut, every calculation disappeared into nothing. The machines had brains, but no memory. Every solution was temporary. Every result was fragile. And IBM's brightest minds were desperate. They tried mercury delay lines, drums that spun endlessly, storing bits as sound waves. They tried vacuum tubes, hot, unstable, fragile. Each experiment felt like building memory out of smoke. The future demanded permanence, but permanence refused to come. Inside IBM's fortress of innovation, the greatest question of computing loomed unsolved. How do you teach a machine to remember? And in this world, a world where black engineers were nearly invisible, one man dared to step forward. He was not supposed to be there. The odds said he would never sit at an IBM desk. The barriers of race, of class, of opportunity said it was impossible. But somehow, through sheer brilliance, through sheer determination, he walked into IBM's laboratories. And with him, he carried something more powerful than a degree. He carried imagination. Imagination to see what others could not. Imagination to ask the question no one else dared. Could memory, true memory, be built out of something as simple as magnetism? It was a wild idea, unproven, risky. But in the 1950s, with IBM betting its future on solving the memory problem, this young black engineer from humble beginnings was about to attempt the impossible. The question was never if he was brilliant. The question was, would IBM listen? Or would history bury his discovery before the world ever saw it? A little boy sitting on the floor of a cramped living room. In his lap, a broken radio. Wires spilling out like veins. A screwdriver too big for his hands. And eyes wide, burning with curiosity. This boy was born into a world that told him what he could not be. A world of no. No entry into certain schools. No seat at certain lunch counters. No chance, it seemed, of ever stepping into the sacred halls of American science. Segregated classrooms. Old, tattered textbooks. Teachers doing their best with what little they had. And yet, in those moments when others might give up, this boy leaned closer to the mysteries inside that radio. Every spark, every hum, every flicker of sound was a promise. Because to him, the language of electricity felt like freedom. Wires didn't care about skin color. Circuits didn't care where you came from. In the quiet crackle of solder, in the glow of a tiny vacuum tube, he found something America tried to deny him: possibility. But possibility is fragile. Dreams don't always survive when doors slam shut. As he grew, so did his hunger. He devoured books on engineering, even when libraries turned him away. He sought out labs, only to be told no, not here, not for you. Internships denied, scholarships redirected. Polite rejections, sharp reminders of where society believed his place should be.
Still, he persisted. Radio kits scavenged from junkyards. Scraps of copper wire twisted into makeshift experiments. Nights spent repairing what others had thrown away. Because in every machine he fixed, he wasn't just proving to himself that he belonged. He was proving to the world that he was already an engineer. But the world wasn't ready to admit it. Imagine the loneliness. Walking into classrooms where no other face looked like his. Hearing whispers, doubting laughter, the unspoken question, what is he doing here? And yet he stayed. Not because the path was easy, but because the vision was clear. Somewhere beyond those walls, he believed, there was a place where his ideas could live. Then, one day, opportunity flickered like a distant light. A teacher who noticed his brilliance. A mentor who slipped him an introduction. A single yes in a lifetime of no's. It wasn't much, but it was enough to wedge a foot in the door of a future he refused to surrender. Because talent, real talent, has a way of breaking through barriers even when everything is stacked against it. And his talent was undeniable. He had transformed rejection into resilience, isolation into imagination, failure into fuel. The boy who once sat on the floor with a broken radio was now a man, carrying an idea bold enough to challenge the limits of computing itself. And so the question becomes, how does a black engineer, raised in a segregated world, denied opportunities at every turn, find his way into IBM? A fortress of white lab coats, polished offices, and guarded gates. How did he, against all odds, step inside the very company that defined the future of machines? And once inside, how would he prove to IBM's brightest minds that he had the key to something they could not solve? Imagine walking into a room where no one expects you to belong. White shirts, thin black ties, engineers hunched over blueprints, diagrams, humming machines. And then you, one of the only black engineers in the entire building. The stares are subtle. The silence is heavier. Every word you speak feels like a test. Every mistake could confirm what some already whisper. He doesn't belong here. This was his first day at IBM, a fortress of innovation, a company whose name was synonymous with the future. But for him, the future didn't feel welcoming. It felt guarded. The isolation was constant. Lunch tables that suddenly grew quiet when he sat down. Ideas dismissed until someone else, someone white, repeated them. Compliments laced with doubt. You're smart for someone like you. And yet he stayed. Because beneath all the politics, all the cold shoulders, one problem burned brighter than everything else. Memory. Computers in the 1950s were brilliant calculators. They could process numbers at lightning speed. But ask them to remember? They faltered. They forgot. They collapsed under their own fragility. Mercury delay lines, spinning magnetic drums, vacuum tubes that overheated and shattered. IBM had tried them all. Each system bulky, expensive, unreliable. The engineers needed something better, something small, something fast, something permanent. He believed he had the answer. Ferrite cores. Tiny magnetic rings, no larger than a fingertip, threaded with delicate wires. Flip the magnet one way, it's a 0. Flip the other, it's a 1. Binary, the language of machines, the language of memory. But ideas on paper mean nothing until they work. And for months, his experiments ended in failure. Cores burned out, wires snapped, circuits sputtered and died. Each night as the lab emptied, he stayed behind. The hum of machines fading into silence. Just him, a desk lamp, and rows of stubborn magnetic rings. Imagine the loneliness of that space. The weight of knowing you are the only one like you in the building. And the only one crazy enough to believe these tiny beads of ferrite could hold the memory of a machine. Failure after failure, hour after hour. He adjusted wires, tested circuits, resoldered connections until his hands shook. And yet he refused to stop. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew he was close. Closer than anyone else had ever been. Then, one day, it happened. The air thick with exhaustion, coffee gone cold, the clock long past midnight. He threads the wire through another ring, adjusts the circuit, holds his breath. The machine hums, lights flicker, data goes in, and for the first time, it comes back out. The core remembered. Not for a second, not for a flicker, but permanently, reliably. The impossible had just become real. He leans back in disbelief. The silence of the lab suddenly feels deafening. Was this it? Had he just unlocked the future? But the question wasn't just whether his invention worked. The real question was darker. Would IBM listen? Would they believe the black engineer who had done what others could not? Or would his breakthrough be buried, just another quiet success erased by doubt, by prejudice, by history itself? A dimly lit laboratory. The clock reads past midnight. The air thick with cigarette smoke and the hum of machines that never sleep. On the table, a prototype. Wires strung through tiny magnetic rings no larger than the head of a pin. Ferrite cores. His ferrite cores. And around him, skeptical faces. IBM engineers in crisp white shirts, arms folded, waiting. Some doubting. Some quietly rooting for him. But all knowing if this test failed, his idea was finished.
The room falls silent. Only the steady hum of the machine remains. He flips the switch. The lights flicker. Circuits engage. A signal is sent. A 1, then a 0, then another 1. Data goes in. Everyone holds their breath. And then it happens. The machine remembers. A flicker of light. A pulse of current. The information doesn't vanish. It comes back, instantly, reliably. The impossible had been solved. For a moment, no one speaks. It's as if the entire room is frozen, stunned by what they've just witnessed. A black engineer, working in a world that doubted him at every step, had just cracked the code that others could not. This was no small victory. This was the birth of true computer memory. From this moment forward, IBM's machines would never again be fragile calculators. They would become something more. They would remember. The engineers in the room are in shock. Some whisper, unable to hide their disbelief. Others scribble notes furiously, already imagining what this could mean for the company. And in the middle of it all, he sits quietly. Proud, yes, but also aware of the silence that followed. Because, while the engineers would eventually celebrate IBM's breakthrough, few would celebrate him. His name would not be etched into the headlines. His invention would not carry his signature. History would remember the machine, but forget the man. And so the question lingers, heavy in the air. If he was the father of computer memory, if he had handed IBM the key to dominate the digital age, why did history bury his name? Why did the world erase the genius who gave computers their very first memory? Imagine dropping a single stone into a still pond. The ripples spread outward, further, faster, until the entire surface is moving. That's what his invention did. IBM took the breakthrough and ran with it. Their machines grew faster, smaller, smarter. With memory that finally worked, they could dominate the market. And dominate they did. From business to government, IBM became the heartbeat of computing. Core memory was everywhere, guiding planes, running banks, calculating missions for NASA. The digital age was no longer a dream. It was here. And yet, the man who made it possible remained in the shadows. Press releases celebrated IBM innovation. Executives took the credit, but his name rarely mentioned. Corporate gloss smoothed over his story. History polished the machine, but erased the engineer. For him, it was a cruel paradox. To see his work change the world, yet to feel the weight of being invisible in that change. In mid-century America, a black engineer could be brilliant, but rarely recognized. He could solve the unsolvable,
yet remain a footnote, or worse, forgotten altogether. His genius was acknowledged in whispers. Inside the lab, colleagues admitted he had done what no one else could. But outside, no statues, no textbooks, no children learning his name in classrooms. The world cheered the machine, but not the man. And so we are left with a haunting truth. As powerful his invention was, the silence around his name may have been just as powerful. Because silence erases, silence steals legacies, silence tells future generations that only some pioneers matter. His invention changed the world, but the world chose not to remember him. And so the question burns. What lessons does this silence leave for us today? If we can forget the man who gave computers their very first memory, what other stories have been buried? Whose brilliance are we still ignoring? You unlock your phone. You stream a video. You send a message halfway across the world. Every tap, every click, every memory stored inside that glowing screen traces back to him. A man whose name was almost erased. A black engineer whose invention became the backbone of our digital lives. Smartphones, laptops, servers powering the internet itself. All descendants of the breakthrough he forged in silence. To forget his story is to forget the foundation of the modern world. He was more than an engineer. He was a pioneer. A man who proved once and for all that brilliance has no color. But here's the truth. History doesn't stay alive on its own. It needs us. It needs voices willing to speak the names that were buried. So if this story moved you, share it, pass it on, because history is only alive if we keep telling it.